Hi everybody, I'm Seb for AETUTS. Today I will show you some really interesting technique on how to translate your text inside of your composition um, in different language instead of having to duplicate your composition. It will probably be really useful if you have like complex animations, like your text rotating or something like that, and you really don't want to be duplicating your composition for each language. So just with a slider and some simple expressions, you can achieve that technique. No hablo español, sorry for that. Um, so let's start. We'll first make a new project. Save. We'll create a new composition. I will now rename it number sign global. You can rename it whatever you want, but just remember that you will have to call this composition from all of your other compositions. So you might want to choose like a simple name for this composition. You will create a null object by clicking a layer and null object. And you will rename it controller. I like to name it in caps lock because caps lock are always cool. And you will put a slider on it. Effect, expression control, slider control. And you can rename that control and name it, for example, language in caps lock as well. Now we will create the composition inside of which we will have all of our text. Of course you can have like dozens of those composition, but now we'll only create one so you can understand the technique. So we will create a new text layer. You can give it a size, or just for the example we will just double click on the T and it creates it centered with no defined width. So we'll write something in it, English for example, because we're original. We will then select that text because what you see inside of the text box will not be exactly what will come out. So just copy that text, and we can even replace it with something that will make us understand that it's not our real text. We'll understand later. So let's open it here. Open your text and alt-click the source text stopwatch, and that's where we will write our expression. So basically, the technique is to make a new array of all of our texts. So let's create a new variable and call it underscore texts. I like to prefix my variable with an underscore so you can easily see where's your variable and where's After Effects methods. So var texts, you will write array like this, and underneath that you will write texts 0 and write, for example, English, and duplicate that line, and 1, 2, and at the end we'll write français and espagnol. So if under that we write texts and 0 with no equals, that will be the value that would be outputted inside of our source text. So if I click out of there, there's English because it's 0. So if I put 1, there will be français. Alright, so now what we want is to replace that 1 with our slider value here. So you can always write it by hand with the name of the composition, the layer, the slider, etc. But there's a faster technique, is to just drag your composition at the bottom, and we will then go and pick whip. Wait a second. We'll first create a new variable, so we will get the value at the right place. underscore slider, and we will pick whip the slider. So let's bring that back here, and now it'll probably give us an error if I take my slider and take it here. Yeah, it gives us an error. Why? It's because our slider has a comma in it, and you cannot have that inside of an array. So what you need to do is just come here and write mat.floor, and put your value inside of the parentheses of the mat floor. Mat floor will just, if you have like for example 1.2, it'll floor it to 1, and that's it. So it'll take out those unnecessary numbers. So if I click out, it seems to work. You can come in global, put a 1 here. Good. Now what we want to do is come here, edit value. We, instead of having 0 to 100, you can just say 2 here to just control it with the real slider, so it'll be easier. Alright, so what are the next steps now? First, writing your array like that is kind of taking a lot of place. So what you can do, you can write it the shorthand way. You just take out all the unnecessary stuff, and you just separate your words with commas, and just let me delete that, and you don't put any at the end, and you close the bracket at the end, put a semicolon at the end, and put an opening bracket at the beginning. That means text is an array with those 3 different values, and it'll still work. Now that we know that, we will go through all the different problems that we may face with that technique. First, we've tried it with simple words, but let's try it with like a more complex sentence. Some people prefer using single quotes, but others prefer double quotes. Now everything will not work anymore. Why is it so? First, our double quotes. You can enclose your different values between either single or double quotes. It doesn't matter. But as soon as you want one inside of your value, you have to escape it. You do that by putting a backslash before it, and After Effects will know that you really want that character inside of your value. So if we go back here, and if we put the slider to 0, you can see all of our text is on the same line, and that's way too big for only one line. What you want to do to just make a new line inside of the text you have inside of your array, you just come where you want to get a new line, and you write \r and a space, and boom, it'll make a new line. You can do that as much as you want, like that. Alright, so we'll put one just so it behaves right. Anyway, you will just switch that there. Good. And we'll just put it to auto. Now, you might have two big texts in some languages, and having new lines wouldn't be enough, so you would like to scale depending on what language you're in. You can do that. You just have to come inside of transform, alt-click the scale stopwatch, and you will have to use conditions. Inside of your condition, you will just make an if for depending on the value of the slider. So what we will do with that value will multiplicate it with our scale. So if we multiplicate like 0.9, our scale will go down to 90%. So what we want to do is bring back our slider variable right here, and we will write if underscore slider equals 0. We will then write, okay, we will create a new variable underscore scale multiplier, and we will write 1 here because that will be our default value. And if slider equals 0, we want our scale multiplier to be equal to 0.9, and here we will replace that with underscore, no, not slider, but scale multiplier, semicolon, and it seems to be working. So if we come back to our global and we play with our controller, let's go back inside and see, here's 100. If you have like multiple language, you can write if, but you can also write if else, else if, with a space between. And if, for example, you have like 10 languages and you want to have different scales for all of them, you can write as many else if as you want. Multiplier equals 0.8. And for the last one, you can write else, that will be your default value, but since we're using a variable, it does the same thing anyway. So it's good for that. Now I think we've overcome all of the different problems that you can face. If, for example, you want to use different settings for something and the anchor point position or whatever, you can always use that technique, if, else if, and finally the else if you want. The last thing we will see is like the better technique, I think, but you have to understand all that before you can really use that and understand what you're doing. So let's create a new text field, and we will write English, make a new line, we'll write, pipe, français, new line, pipe, Espanol, and we'll just hide this one. Okay, so what we want to do with this one, we'll open our source text, we will bring back our slider, like that, open that up, because in fact it's kind of, the technique on that text field is pretty good, but still you have to come here and edit your text here, and this may not be the funniest thing to do. So the best technique to me is come here and write all those texts, all your different languages separated by pipes or any characters that you know that won't be used inside of your text. And inside of your source text value, you will take your slider variable, and under that you will write value. You can erase that. Value anyway means text.source text. Anywhere that you want value is just the actual value of whatever expression you are. So you write value.split, and open parentheses, you open your quotes and put your pipe in it or whatever character you want to be using to separate your languages, and you will open the brackets and close your brackets and write slider. Boom. You come back here and you can do that. So what did we do here? First we have like our slider value here, and we have our value, but split is a JavaScript function that will separate the given text, which is value, which is all of that, and it will separate it and separate it with that character and put all of the different values in different array cells. So value.split pipe would equal to an array with English, French, like that. It's the same thing. So that's the array, and that's our slider value. It's way faster to write it that way and way cleaner. So you can edit your text right here. But you cannot like give that a big amount of something that will not work. Because if you come here and pump that up, it will always take the values of the first character. So if you really want to have different scales or different positions or whatever, you will still have to use the if, else technique. So that's about it. Hope you liked this tutorial. Again, I'm Seb for ATATS, and see you next time. Bye-bye.